Welcome to Biz Meds with Darris and Saad, where we give you the medications for your business. This podcast is all about the minimum effective doses you need to make a massive improvement in your business. Listen and enjoy.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Biz Meds. We are your hosts. My name is Saad.
And I'm Darris.
For today's episode, we want to talk about 3 things that business owners keep running into, and this is a ever growing. Yeah,
this is really any challenge you come to in your business, you'll be able to classify it in one of 3 ways.
Yeah, and this is something you've shared before. We've talked about it. As a business owner, you're going to run into repetitive problems later down the road. So this is another accumulation of something that's going to continue growing as your business grows.
You'll always be able to look back and have a framework to say, okay, which bucket does the thing that I'm going through, where does it fit? So the first one is, guess what? Time. So
Time can be your biggest enemy or your greatest
ally. And so when you're looking at that, so some of the challenges you're going through, so, we talk to business owners a lot, or we're having conversations, hey, what are the things you're struggling with? And it's, I just don't have the time to do this. Or why haven't you been able to accomplish that? Well, I just don't have the time. So that becomes a very common topic or challenge that a lot of business owners have. And it's usually, and so what are the things that, we can help solve with that? Part of the things is, you don't know what you're working on. So you actually don't operate from a somewhat of a default calendar. So a lot of your time is just spent running around, just juggling things, putting out fires, doing things, and you don't actually schedule blocks to do things. So we've talked about flow blocks and being able to do leverage work. And if you don't have those scheduled and built in, then of course you'll never have the time. So if you don't make the time for something to be important, it'll never be important. So having a default calendar default calendar is really important in that.
Exactly. And as you're growing and kind of coming across the things that you need to focus your time on, you need to learn the things that you shouldn't be focusing time on.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a really good point. It's not only the things you say yes to, it's also a lot of the things you have to say no to allow you to do those and then have more time.
Mm-hmm.
So
time is a big one.
It is. It usually is. And you see that one pop up. It's kind of right below the surface. And so as we start to have conversations, it usually bubbles up in some way, or we just don't have the time to do that, and that's usually what happens. The other kind of topic that usually boils, or that you can really kind of classify things, is it's really about team. So how many times are we're talking with business owners and like, I just can't find good people, or I can't motivate my people, or it's this person does this, or this person doesn't even know how to do this, or these people just create all these issues, or I don't even have a team, so
I can't find the time to train my team.
Yeah, and then that kind of follows into the other part of it. And so the second bucket of the common challenges you can kind of classify as is going to be team. So the first one was time, now it's team, and I think we just kind of touched on a couple of those challenges. Is how do you find good people? How do you train good people? How do you retain them? How do you grow them? So in most cases, you don't have a good hiring process or system. You don't have a good recruitment system. You don't have a good leadership and development system, or even a coaching system. And for a lot of those, and you probably don't even have a organizational plan set out. So you probably don't even have the vision of what your company should look like. And so you're just, I'm going to hire for this because I think I need this skill set. And it's not really the most effective way, because you haven't really thought out about, okay, what are all the positions I'm actually needing to fill, and filling those strategically in a way that helps you regain more of your time back. So that's kind of how that bridges together with that bucket.
Yeah. And I love the fact that you said like a lot of companies don't have proper plans in terms of how to grow their people or how to, you know, leverage their skill sets to, you know, better resource allocate internally for the business.
Yeah, I mean, and that's not a shot at anyone. That's
Yeah.
usually just a function of, people doing the best they can with what they have, and you don't know what you don't know. So it's really hard to think about, oh, I need to think about growing and leading and coaching someone when you're like, oh, I'm hiring for this person because I think they should be able to do that. And that's as much thought as we were able to give to it because I don't have time, or, I have so many other pressing issues coming across my table that I don't even know how to figure all that out.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. No, I do agree like that. It's not a shot at anybody, but it is a reality that a lot of businesses keep running into.
Yeah. And it's what separates a mediocre business from great businesses is the ones that learn how to overcome that and start to grow and build. I didn't mean to talk over there for a second. But the ones that really separate themselves are the ones that actually realize how much investing in people and developing people is a game changer and leverage, like a huge leverage piece for them. And then they really start to grow.
Yeah. They need a good system, as somebody said before.
Yes. And that's really what it comes down to, right? Because systems create leverage. It reduces time, speed, and energy it takes to get somewhere.
Yeah.
So that's why a system is so important. Even training. There's if you want a minimum of effective dose for training, it's, as an owner, if you're doing something, use, I teach my clients, and I've done it before, is just use a simple program like Loom. If it's on the computer, just record yourself and talk through what you're doing. And Loom has an excellent function where it will take whatever you say, it'll give you a transcript, but the AI in Loom can also build you a workflow process document. It'll tell you the step by step. And then now you're not stuck recreating that. You can actually just edit a document that's already done. So it's helping you save more time doing that. But if you're already doing a task and you're like, well, I got to train someone to do that, and you're kind of manually showing them, just record yourself doing that and say, here, go do this, follow this video and this document. And that's, 80% of something that's done for you is a million times better than what it was.
That's so meta. You're using AI to leverage and reduce your time to implement something that your team is going to be. Oh man, why is this layers to that?
There's a lot of layers, but in terms of using if you don't know what Loom is, just go. I think you can get it for like $10 a month. It's so silly, ridiculously cheap, and you don't have to record your face, but you can just record your voice and show exactly what's on your screen. And that's the easiest thing to do if you're already doing something. Leverage the time and energy you're already putting into something, and then you can now store that, in a common place where people can go and reference that, and you can use that to train people like forever.
Yeah.
Right. So that becomes infinite leverage versus we've all been through where I'm going to show you how to do this, and you click here and then you do this and then you do this other funky thing. And and then we're relying on people's memories or them to, furiously write notes down. We have technology that will help us do that much better.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then I guess we'll go beyond that now. So we have time, team, and guess what? The last kind of classification of the challenges you're facing is probably money. So when we think about it, when you boil down any challenge that you're experiencing in business, it's usually one of those three. It's time, team, money, or maybe a combination of those. And so it's, oh, well, I don't have as much cash that I want. Well, that's probably a normal thing. So either you don't have a good cash flow system, so cash management system, or you may not have a really good marketing and sales system. You may not have a really robust system for tracking all that stuff. So in those cases, like those are the things you need to build to help you with that. So if you don't know what your marketing investment's doing, your return on your marketing dollars is doing, well, then how are you able to analyze whether or not that's a good investment, right? And then if you're not looking at being able to track the numbers in your sales system, like how long it's taking you to convert from when you get a lead to when that converts into a sale, and what your lifetime value is and your cost to acquire that client or your customer. Like if you don't know those, how are you able to even predict what's going to happen and then plan to move that faster?
Yeah. And make better decisions around it. Yeah.
Yeah. So those systems really are about supporting that. And then how do you then
grow
and then increase the speed of which cash comes into your business and slow it leaving. So those are, and then sometimes, the reason why you can't have something else is because you don't have enough cash flow coming in to support that. So that's why I say that those buckets start to tie together, and they're interrelated, but usually the challenges that you're coming up with are one of those three buckets.
Well, the perfect example, just in you talking there, is utilizing like the application called Loom.
Yeah.
$10 a month. That's a money thing.
Mm-hmm.
That money, that $10 investment is going to get you much further in terms of utilizing or improving and optimizing the other two. It's just like there is all stacked on top of
it
each other.
stacks and it's interrelated. And so this is where, like, in terms of a very simple framework, if you're thinking about, oh, I'm having these challenges, like go back and say, okay, which one of these three? And then if I'm trying to prioritize to solve, I want to know which one it has the largest impact, and specifically probably like money impact, right? So impact as a whole, and then money impact. And then below that really sits, because I used to just leave it at those three and be like, okay,
there's a fourth.
Well,
There's a secret.
There's there's that, and then there's layers. And so when we talk about that, all that whole bucket is really supported about the real common commodity, or the only resource that we all have in common, which is time. Because usually when you're doing something, that is a function of time, right? So, that whole, when we talked at the beginning of the first bucket, time, it's, I don't have the time to do that, or we don't have the time to do that. Okay, well, time, you can, like, in a finite amount of time, what are going to be the things that affect what can be done in that time? It's going to be two things. It's attention and focus. So is it, what is it you're putting your attention on, and how much focus are you able to put on that? Right? So what is it that you're trying to do, and how much focus you can do that? Because as we know through the neuroscience psychology of flow, that in let's say 90 minutes or 2 hours, when you start to leverage flow, you can more than double, triple, quadruple your productivity in that time, in the same amount of time. And that's a function of attention and focus, right? And we use that and say, okay, well, then we integrate flow into that. And that's why we will always talk about flow being a leverage activity. So all of that really becomes supported by how much can we do in a certain amount of time. And that's why we also talk about the power of the 1 month day. That's why we introduced, and how the 1 month day became so important, and how I developed the system around that was, okay, in a world of these constraints, how do you start working on those things so you have time to then say, if I'm going to work and create leverage in these areas, I'm going to build something, I'm going to build a system that's going to help my team have more time to make more money. Right? Like that's where that layer comes in. But it's those three buckets are really supported with, are you doing the most important thing, is identifying which key things you need to be focusing on in that amount of time. So we also block that time away so that you actually reclaim more time during the rest of the time to deal with and manage, your personal relationships, but also your team and money, and do that, and then help that leverage more time, money, and energy to go into creating more cash flow.
Oh, so it's like pretty much a 3-layered cake, sponge cake, with the 1 month day being the icing, and now the one more about the other.
It's like an icing layer at the bottom.
But it's also at the top. I feel like
icing everywhere. It's a terrible analogy. But that, hopefully that kind of makes sense conceptually.
Yeah.
That, you start from being able to first, okay, what are the challenges I'm going through? Let's Are they a function of time, team, or money? Okay, how do those have impact? And then myself being the business owner, all right, if I have the greatest impact to what that's going to be, well, then I'm going to take advantage of a 1 month day. I'm going to leverage flow so that in a finite amount of time, I'm going to get 2, 3, 4, 5 times as much done as the normal person would on the most important things, so that I affect all 3 of those buckets at the same time, right? And ideally what that's going to do is we're able to make more money with as the same or less time and team.
Yeah.
And so and then we use the team, and we're always creating more leverage so that we can always make more money with less and less resources, less energy.
Yeah.
Right? But and that's why, again, why we want to spend a lot of our time building systems
Yeah.
to help support that. So sales, marketing, cash flow, leadership, coaching, all those systems that really fundamentally support the business in those 3 areas.
Yeah.
And with that, I will say the key part of that is, what are we doing with our time?
Yeah. And all 3 are pretty much just sharpening each other, as you're saying. I think one of the how can one quickly identify which one of the 3 buckets the problem? I mean, I think it's kind of a
I think it's pretty simple. You,
Yeah.
you just say, okay, well, what is the challenge? Is it
too long.
Yeah. Is it really a money problem? Is it, could it be solved by money?
Yeah.
Right. Is it, or do I just need to put more time into it? Do I just need more time to actually build that thing that's going to do that?
Yeah.
I think if you just sit down and you have to have a specific example, because otherwise.
Yeah. Sorry. I realized that as soon as I said that, because a lot of times it also can be overshadowed by ego, because if somebody's constantly doing something and now they're just so invested in it.
Never happened.
They're just so invested.
Never had a business owner that tried to do it all and was never the problem.
Every time.
Every time. I even censored myself.
and I think that's what I was trying to get at with that question, but I guess it's self-explanatory. If you yourself are the problem, then you have to remove yourself from the equation.
Well, okay, so yes, that I think it's a couple layer conversation. Everything about layers. Everything is about, this is a Shrek onion conversation. It's layered in that if you are not willing to humble yourself and understand that you could be part of the problem, and that you're willing to lead yourself. So this comes back to the very beginning, is you're not willing to lead yourself. Or the flip side of that is you are always going to be your biggest constraint in your business. So if you're not consistently dealing with yourself and your own constraints and your own issues, then you will always limit the business. So you can either limit it or unlimit it. And that's really a function of you and saying, okay, being very objective with yourself. Am I being part of the problem here? Am I being the roadblock? Am I finding myself having to be in all these meetings and actually creating the time issue because no one has the time, because I need to be so involved in things.
Yeah.
Okay. So I need a better system, right, of being able to manage those meetings and make sure that I get what I need out of it, but I'm also giving the proper direction, but I'm also getting the proper feedback. So that becomes, okay, so maybe that's, how do you what's your meeting cadence, or what types of meetings are you having? And then what's the structure that you have in there that actually builds that in? Or is it an hour long every day of overkill and everyone's sitting around and talking about the same thing day in and day out? We laugh because we've lived through that. I've lived through those too until I start to learn how to do them better. Right. And okay, well, you probably don't need an hour every day. Right. Or how many direct reports do you have?
Yeah.
There's math, or there's research that shows, maximum of 7 and 5 is ideal.
Yeah.
Right. So from a direct report standpoint, 5 is a kind of the ideal. 7 is the upper. And if you have more than that, well, you're good luck. It's going to be much more difficult to manage that. And then with that, maybe you don't have maybe you have a lot more and you have indirect reports, but now you start trying to keep your fingers in all of it.
Yeah.
So again, you have to do some really hard work, inside work of, am I creating the roadblocks?
Right.
That goes a little off, but that's where it is helpful to have someone, an impartial other person, to come and help walk you through that sometimes.
Right.
And say, okay, well, here, let's free you up in these areas and start to help you work through some of those things, those limiting beliefs, and how to structure that, as opposed to abdicating and saying, oh, well, I don't need to be part of these meetings. And then 2 months later, everything has gone completely sideways because you've just kind of said, hey, Jesus, take the wheel. And that's not the best course of action.
And it's going into a ditch.
Yeah. And you've left no one any type of instruction. And so what do? They're like, well, in the absence of rules, people make up their own.
Yeah.
But they don't know any better. So what do? They're just steal for the ditch. Like, oh, like, I just couldn't stop going.
That's hilarious. Yeah, sorry, like that my thought process came from so we've been in these situations before, and like you probably have seen it a lot more than I have, but every time that it happens and I bring you in, you're always like, oh, this is what you should have done. I know I should have done that, but I'm so closely like involved and I'm so into the weeds, I can't pull myself out to look at the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like,
that's a skill, right? You develop that skill over time, and you had to get the reps in. It's just like any of the things that we've talked about. It's, we talk about crucial conversations, and I had this conversation with a client just the other day, and we've been working now for quite a few years together, and just because you read a book and you start to learn the fundamentals of how to communicate when emotions and stakes are high and emotions are high and things are really real, I mean, doesn't mean you get it right off the bat. You still need to get the reps in.
Couple, yeah.
And so with those things, like, I still make mistakes, right? As a leader, as a business owner, things, I still make mistakes because I'm human, right? The thing is, okay, can you recognize and start to improve from time to time? Take the lesson and learn, right? And that's where it is. It's you don't even when you're developing and you're learning how to have crucial conversations, doesn't mean you don't mess up from time to time. Doesn't mean that sometimes your emotions don't get the best of you. It means that sometimes you get a little too close to this thing and you forget to just take a step back and breathe and like, oh, what can I control and how could I approach this differently? Or who can I talk to get some a little more perspective on this, right? Like there's more to it, and that's why it's a process. It's not a dichotomy of yes or no, black or white. You do it or you don't. Like you've made it or you haven't.
Yeah.
There's a scale of no. It's a skill. It's just like getting into flow and learning how to leverage flow. It's the first time you do it feels weird. Most times for most people, until you actually explain to them what flow is, they don't really know what it is. They just remember having this awesome experience where, oh my God, like the world was I was just so in the zone and things were perfect. I didn't have to think about it. And then you say, oh, that's a flow state. What do you mean? And this is what's happening, like neurologically, physically. These are things that are all happening. Like, oh wow, and we can actually induce that state, but that's a skill that you can develop. And here's all the things that we need to do to make that happen. You're like, oh, does it mean it's going to happen? Does it happen magically every time? No, but you get better and better and better at it.
Yeah.
Right. So the thing is, are you trying to get better and better and better at it?
Yeah.
Right. That's the difference. So it's the learner growth or fixed mindset.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Layers.
Okay.
Themes, layers, cakes and onions.
Yeah. Right, Gunny. That's hilarious.
That's whatever I think about layers.
Yeah.
How are we doing for time? Actually, we're doing pretty good for time.
We're doing pretty good.
Yeah.
We're like pretty much bang on.
So yeah, I mean, the idea for today was really, in business, you're gonna face a lot of challenges, right? Especially if you have people on your team. When you think about it, it's first giving you the mental framework of how do you identify where you're having the challenge? Is it time, team, or money?
Yeah.
Okay. And there'll be some solutions that work in there that will help solve a couple of those, right?
Yeah.
Because if you have a good sales and marketing system,
Yeah.
ideally what that does is it helps you create more money, but also saves you time, and you have a team that's going to run that, right? So those kind of tie together. And then with that, so any of those three, as a business owner, when you're trying to work towards, you want to think about how they impact the business, and then prioritize your time in terms of a 1 month day to use your most valuable assets are your attention and focus, and leverage flow to multiply the output of that to solve those problems so that you can have more money. And if you have more money, you can then solve a lot of those things faster. Because some of those things you can, I have all these, well, I can now hire better to bring in maybe the A+ star that I couldn't afford before. But now I can do that, and they're worth probably 3 or 4 really good people.
Yeah.
Right. Or sorry, they a really A+ person is worth like 3 or 4 people, just mediocre people, which most. So it is. But, and going back, and so we want to make sure that as a business owner, you're using your time most effectively to work on the most important things. And so if you can't, that's why we want to help you control that. We leverage flow, because that is the single biggest secret magic sauce that's going to help you achieve that faster than you've ever thought possible.
Mm-hmm.
So there you have it, folks.
No, that was a really good podcast. Well, sorry. I'm not biased at all. No, guys. Yeah. The reason why I say that is because, again, like, for me, just like when we're having these conversations, I tend to identify the problems that I sometimes bring to business as well.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of like, oh, you know what? Like, absolutely could have done that one differently this way. Like, this is what I could have done to leverage it. So, yeah, sorry. If I do say so myself, real good podcast.
So we want to say thank you to everyone that has joined us. If you've been here from the beginning, Mom, Saad's mom, thank you. I promise a special shout out to Marissa, who's been a very
Active listener.
From the very beginning. So Marissa, here's your shout out. I promised you.
Thank you, Marissa.
And as we look forward to you sharing specifically this episode a lot. And if you've been here from, just joined us again, I'm Darris
Saad.
And we're Biz Meds, and we're here to give you the minimum effective dose to help your business grow and scale faster. And if you don't know, we do have a masterclass. You just have to submit your email. There's a link down below in the show notes. It's called Burnout to Breakthrough. It's a neuroscience-based masterclass to help you reduce and get rid of cognitive overload and help you become your better self. And so with that, we want to say thank you to everyone. And remember, you are just one day away from the life you've always wanted. We will see you in the next episode.